Mappillai. Can we please welcome Carlo Pizzati and Rowlatt? They both are going to be signing their books after the session at the book signing area. Grab your copies. Thank you.
Thank you very much and welcome. So please give it another huge round of applause to Carlo Pizzati. He's
Thank you.
Much loved, local and not local. He's an Italian writer and journalist, writes for La Stampa and The Hindu. He's published 2 novels and 3 works of non-fiction and a short story collection, so you're in safe hands. He lives with his wife, who all of you have heard of, Tishani Doshi, the poet and dancer. And they live together near a fishing village in Tamil Nadu, in beautiful Tamil Nadu. Carlo self-identifies as a reverse coconut, and we'll be finding out more about that later. This is the book, Mappillai, and you take pains to insist that it's not an India book, and then you admit that it kind of is. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean, first of all, good morning. Thank you for being here. When I say that it's not an India book, there is a chapter called "This is not, all capital, an India book." I'm trying to explain that I am not one of those Goras who come here and try to explain your country to you. You know, so as simple as that.
There have been a few.
There have been a few, exactly. And I think it's 2019, 2018. It's a bit late to be doing that. It's like we've moved on. And so the only thing that I can do is tell you my anecdotes of my life here in India in the last 10 years, since 2010 to 2018, tell you how I have transformed. Maybe you can understand how I've transformed through the anecdotes that I tell you about, but I certainly cannot sit there and analyze them. I'm not an anthropologist, I'm not a historian, so I'm a journalist who has written his novels and his books, and so I don't write an India book. Of course, you can draw your own conclusions, and I think that a lot of readers have drawn their conclusions from what they read, but it's not sitting there on a podium telling you, I will explain to you what India is about. I will tell you about the life in a little fisherman village in the south of India, south of Chennai, an hour and a half from the big city, an hour north of Pondicherry, how it is to survive surrounded by little snakes and rats and egrets come in the morning to pluck the insects off the lawn and going for walks on the beach and, witness one of the most common sights in India, which is public defecation. So you will have that experience.
You do, yeah. I mean, there are certain sort of stereotype traps that it's quite hard to avoid. I mean, for example, I was living in Delhi for some time, and each incoming journalist always writes that story about monkeys in Khan Market, woohoo! And all the other journalists go, oh yeah, they're still in the monkeys phase. And
it's like interviewing the taxi driver.
It's the same thing. Yes. And so, you know, you approach these traps, but you treat it in a different way. So you talk about open defecation, about mangoes, but you're doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
Was that conscious?
Well, yeah, of course it is conscious, but I mean, I do it in a different way in the sense that I try to follow the great masters of new journalism, like George Plimpton or Gay Talese, and I attempt to experience what the locals are doing. But of course, when it comes to public defecation, I fail miserably.
He tried very hard.
Because of my European constipation hang-ups. So I did try, and I failed. So, but yes, so I try to do that. I mean, I learned to eat quite well with my hand, and when I go to Europe, people telling me that I do this without realizing it, you know, and I can teach people to do it, you know, by focusing on the third eye and do the Indian head bob. Of course, there are very different types of Indian head bobs. There are different types of gestures that for an Italian come quite easy because we're already used to do that.
You're halfway there.
Yes, already. So we know we have our mudras, so it's easy to learn the Indian mudras. So yeah, I think that it's a lot about having an experience with a culture that actually is very close to my original culture, which is kind of Italian, I suppose, even though I moved to America at 16 and I travel around the world. So the slogan, someone asked me, like, so now how do I identify yourself? So I'm trying to go with Cosmopolitalian. I think that will work now.
I like that. That works for me. But you have more of a deep connection than most of us whiteys in India. Tell me a little bit about your father-in-law, who's Gujarati, and he's a constant figure in the book. Clearly, he's quite an important person in your life.
Yes, yes. I think that's the difference also in why this is not an India book in a way. It's also because the reason why I came to India is not a great love for India. It's not an enamorament for what India symbolized. I read about India as a boy, like everybody, and I was misinformed by Rudyard Kipling and Herman Hesse. And of course, I was inspired to come here by them. Siddhartha is a great book for me. But of course, it doesn't render what India actually is. So I was not one of those people who come to move to India because they're in love with India. I came to India, well, looking for answers, actually, as a yogi studying Ashtanga yoga with Pattabhi.
So you were a yoga person.
I was a total yoga person. I mean, I take on full responsibility for being one of those sick people.
Because you're quite mean about those guys.
Well,
later.
because I am mean about myself in 2008, meaning arriving as a middle-aged man in a crisis, with his profession as a journalist, decided to take a break, with the mother of my child also, we separated from, and in general with a middle-age crisis that a lot of this, I mean sick, slightly tired Europeans and Westerners arrive in this state of mind looking for a solution in India, honestly. So, and then some of them, many of them, like myself, see everything as magical somehow. And it is magical, of course it is, but with a level of naivete, which is very normal if you haven't grown up here, I think. So everything seems to have a message, everything seems to have a lesson, and everything does, of course, when you are open to it. But I think that then, in my case, also thanks to my father-in-law, slowly I began to integrate and to normalize my experience. So it's a bit of a cultural shock to fall in love that deeply with India, I believe. What happened to me, I fell in love with a woman who lives here. And so I learned my love, deep love for India through the love for my wife, who's Indian, right? So that's how it makes a difference, I think, also. So that's how it works. So,
yeah. You've had a very, very globe-trotting, peripatetic lifestyle, and well, your whole life. And I think the book almost represents that in a way. It's almost like a butterfly floating, alighting on different topics very lightly. Was that something that you chose to adapt? Is that a style of travel writing that you have sought to
Travel writing, no.
No travel writing, so it's not. But just you invoked
I mean, because yesterday I was in a travel writing panel, and I made this point.
I saw this. You were quite annoyed, weren't you?
No, I'm not annoyed, but I'm just making a point which I think a lot of people got, luckily. Like a lot of people got a lot of things of the books, to my surprise. I was very afraid of being misunderstood. But the thing is, the point I was making is, it's not travel writing.
Why not?
Because I've been living here for 10 years. I'm not a traveler. I know I'm white, but I live here. I'm an OCI. I have a lifelong visa. I'm a resident. So if you are an Indian who goes to America and you write a book about your experiences there, like, I don't know, let's invent a title like Immigrant Montana or something like that. Yeah. Then you are on a panel that talks about migrant literature. But if you are an Italian who comes to India and lives here for 10 years and writes a memoir about his experiences, then you go to a travel panel. Because, you're a whitey, so you must be traveling through India. No, I don't. I actually, earn in rupees. So it's a little different. I explain that to the restaurants in touristic areas when they try to overcharge me and I bring out my Aadhaar card. It works. It gets me like 30% off.
So let's be clear. This is migrant literature, not travel literature.
It's migrant literature. Thank you for making me
finally
bring the message that even though I'm a whitey in India, of course, it's a privileged migrant. And I have a whole chapter that talks about white privilege.
We do, but I want to come to that later. I'd love, if you would, for you to do a reading now.
Yes.
The section about traffic, I think, would be a nice one.
But it's connected to white privilege, because actually it's called white privilege in Chennai traffic. Because, of course, I do get, as you see in the beginning of the chapter, I think I probably get away with a lot of maneuvers in traffic without being cursed out because of that white privilege. But I did get 5 speeding tickets, so it comes...
How many speeding tickets?
I got 5.
That was just this morning? Oh.
No, in the last 10 years.
Okay.
I learned, because I think in order to understand India, you need to learn to read the signs. And I think that you need to learn to read also the traffic signs. I slowly learned how to read them, so I stopped getting tickets. And I only had to pay 2 bribes out of those 5. So I'll explain to you what I learned about living in India through driving in a chapter called White Man's Privilege in Chennai's Spiral Traffic. I got my first lesson in traffic behavior in Chennai while having one of my Mediterranean moments. You know when your blood heats up and you start identifying with the matriculation number of the piece of metal and the rubber that you are driving, and you take it personally. You will be the car that gets ahead. And so you race through an insane gobble of Maruti Suzukis, EcoSports, Dusters, any of those average, decent cars of not-so-new India. Machines that can take the dry season potholes as well as the occasional monsoon flooding. After a few close calls, the time comes when you and your nemesis are both stuck at a traffic light. This is the moment when I, as a passion-prone Southern European, feel like the time has come to roll down the window, start a series of insulting gestures with my hands, meaning in Italian gesturist language, "Who do you think you are? Are you mad to drive like that? I'm more man than you, and I will demonstrate it to you with impressive swiftness in automotive maneuvers, as I have already done in the last 15 minutes. Then, I would normally shout something about the other driver's mother, his inbreeding parents, the limited faithfulness of his wife, and other such not so well documented theories about the total stranger who meanwhile is giving me the Tamil treatment." You've seen it, I guess. In fact, he's wearing the mandatory mustache, the out-of-fashion long hair covering his neck, the bald spot, and the wraparound dark shades. In the brilliance of his nicely pressed white shirt, a blinding huge smile opens up in his fully lipped mouth as he gives me the slow-motion Tamil version of the infamous head bob, indicating I'm more cool-headed than you are. I've gotten here without a drop of sweat. This is my turf. I belong, and I'm going to jump ahead of you of your car within the next 3 moves after the light turns green. What am I to do but to simply smile back in the widest possible way and realize this is exactly what will happen. And so I let it happen, and I thank Chennai traffic for this lesson. I sit back and follow the instructions glued to the back of the car of this well-humored prankster warrior whose bumper sticker invites me to relax. And this is exactly what I intend to do, just when I get waved down by a tall, muscular, regularly mustachioed Tamil officer with a crafty smile and low command of English. After getting my driver license and asking me where I live and where I work, he goes to the back of the car to confabulate with his superior. Maybe because of white man's privilege again, or because an Italian born in Switzerland with a US driver license but teaching in a college in Chennai is already complicated enough. It seems like the officer who's in charge actually wants to let me go without a ticket. There is obviously a discussion about it, though. The cop gives me back my document. He leans with his big forearms on my roll-down window and looking straight at me with a sneaky yet languid gaze, he says, "Any compliments?" Okay, I realize he wants a bribe, but I can't help blurting out, "Sure, man, you have the most beautiful mustache I've ever seen." Okay, so as I roll down the window, I'm laughing so hard inside myself that I think it isn't fair. This man has provided me with an anecdote I can use for years, like even now. He deserves to be paid. I reach into my pocket, roll down the window again, and I slip him a 500 rupee bill, which he receives with a totally indifferent expression, and I race off again into the traffic.
Thank you very much for that, Carlo. That was delightful. I enjoyed in particular the exchange of smiles with added menace. And I want to talk about smiling, because that's one of the themes that you elaborate on, and the awkwardness of us whiteys abroad in India, and how, we'll eagerly smile at people in a way that Indian people don't, and how you found comfort in the end with channeling your inner rudeness. Talk us through that.
Well, I think that a lot of white people, when they first arrive, because of especially the British.
We feel guilty.
Yeah, exactly. And you are.
Yeah.
So I think
well
that I mean, not personally, but probably your grandparents.
Yeah.
So they definitely need, first of all, they are amazed that strangers smile at them. And it's such a relief and such a wonderful feeling, of course. But also I think that there is an awkwardness, a cultural awkwardness. explain in the book there are different types of smiles around the world. There's the Pan-American smile, there's a French smile, there's a smile if you mean it, smile if you're trying to communicate that you are non-hostile, like the Pan-American smile, for example. So I think here, when I saw a lady almost kill herself jumping off the bus in Chennai, and it's a kind of situation where in Italy you would see the lady crying or getting in an argument or kicking the bus, and the lady smiled, right, or laughed actually. So the thing I learned here is that smile is used in a different way. It's to hide embarrassment sometimes, it's to diffuse tension, and you can't understand that if you just come here for a few months or if you just come here for a few days or for a few weeks. So for me, even though because I lived in Mexico before I understood the Mexican smile, which is also similar in a certain way, I think it's useful to understand that so that you don't misinterpret it for an availability that is not there. But it's also incredibly wonderful anyway, because having grown around grumpy, long faces like myself, I am very happy to be surrounded, however hypocritical it might be by my code, by smiling faces, especially in Tamil Nadu, because it raises my heart a little bit. Like, it makes me feel like I'm going to have a good day,
Oh, I wanted to focus in on the awkwardness more, and you make the point that white people smile to engage in a sort of faux egalitarian kind of brethren thing, which is, in your interpretation, quite inappropriate and unnecessary.
Well, in a way, yes, because in fact, I think that you have to understand how to smile and to which measure. I mean, I think that I can move the example about the smile and the attempted egalitarian way with which us whites smile in the beginning of our experience in India with the lesson that my wife taught me about the neighboring village where we live, which is Paramankeni in Tamil Nadu. I wanted to immediately go there in my egalitarian Margaret Mead sort of soul and meet the locals, right? We are the same and blah, blah, blah. See how they live. And obviously she kind of taught me one first Indian lesson, which is like, yeah, okay, all right, you'll go there, you'll make friends, you'll have tea. Are you okay with the fact that whenever they want and they have the right to, they'll come over to your house and expect to have the same hospitality that they're going to give you? So you'll be in the middle of writing your book in the morning, they'll show up, as it is their right. And so she taught me about a lesson that, of course, it made me feel uncomfortable because I would like to be that open and available. But it's true that here in India, because we are so many, you need to take a different distance, I think. And so, even though it cost me a little bit because I grew up in a somewhat social democratic context of egalitarianism, my generation, particularly in Italy and in Europe, was brought up with avoiding this social distance. And here I learned that somehow it has to be adopted if you want to integrate. And I faced that with the house help as well. I tried to analyze, but using also the lessons of a very interesting book about the topic called the looking away syndrome, right?
Yeah, this is very much part of the journey of your 10-year span. This 10-year span of this book is these changes that take place in you. Like
learning to accept and not to feel uncomfortable about the fact that there are people living there with you, you know their lives a little bit, and Kiran Nagarkar calls them the extras, right? The extras of the movie of our life. So for a European, for an American even more, I suppose, because a lot of Americans are embarrassed of having a house cleaning lady, right?
But they call them helpers, which is kind of a bit delicate, really.
Yeah, it's supposed to be on the same level.
Yes.
They're helping you, yeah, but they're getting paid for it, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So the house help. I think that for me, it's been useful in order to not feel my stomach have a painful reaction whenever I see the watchman sleeping in the garage, and understand. For example, you need to understand that in order to get to that sleeping on the floor in India is not like sleeping on the floor in Europe. Whenever European people that I meet in a touristic location say, oh, I went to Calcutta or I went to Chennai, or all these people sleeping on the floor. Yes, there are people that it's not great to sleep on the floor, but socially it's not as demeaning to sleep on the floor. My father-in-law, when he wants to take a nice nap at the beach house, when in the hot season, the freshest spot is when the pillows near the very nice cement floor, and I don't find it demeaning. In Italy, it would be odd, but I think in India, it's perfectly acceptable and smart because it's a little fresher, simply, right? So those are simple things that I try to help. This is not a book written for whiteys in Europe. Otherwise, I would be on the travel panel.
Who's it written for?
Oh, it's written for everyone, but definitely...
Everybody says that. I
no,
mean,
of course, because we want to...
When you were writing the story, was there an audience in mind?
I really had both audiences in mind because this book is informed by my conversation with my friends in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, in Mumbai, in Delhi, and I give voice to them. So it's a very Indian point of view in making fun of us yoga people as well, from the yoga people point of view who has Indianized. So I can see both sides. So I cannot insult too much the yoga people because I have been one and I believe in the usefulness of what India has to offer with yoga to the world. But on the other hand, I also take on a bit of a more comical view that some Indian friends of the 30, 40-something industrialist or artist or people who work in the shop or whatever have with regards to this kind of influx, which is increasing, by the way. So it's actually a trend that worldwide, as Europe gets into a serious crisis, we're going to see more pale faces around the world. I was talking to some friends from Kenya telling me they had a huge migration of Greeks after the Greek crisis. So Nairobi has got thousands of Greeks looking for work. Yeah. So because migration is always about, those darker people that go to Europe, but it's not like that, actually.
Yeah, times are changing, for sure. I like very much in particular, there's an incident where, again, this is about your journey, if you will. There's an incident in a queue where you develop your newfound superpowers of Indian patience. Can you tell us about that incident?
Well, yes, because this is because I thought I had the necessary virtue to survive in India, because I'd been a very adventurous war correspondent, foreign policy, but in a lot of, like, let's say, low-intensity war situation in Latin America, etc. So I've been arrested in strange contexts, like by the Secret Service in Colombia. I was shot at by police at the Guatemalan border, or arrested by the Foreign Legion in the Pacific. So I had a lot of courage, and I thought that, that's really the virtue that I needed to survive in India, because I thought it was going to be so scary, because everybody, if you haven't come here the first time, like people that that have never come here, say the same thing that I said before coming here, which is like, yeah, I'd love to come to India, but I'm so scared. There's dengue, malaria, elephantiasis, leprosy. I said, yes, okay, you should inform yourself a little better. But yes, there is dengue, malaria, of course. So, of course, I didn't need any of that because it takes no courage. It's quite a harmonious, much more than on a daily, like this traffic chapter explains, on a daily experience, it's much more harmonious society than Western society. We would have been punching each other in Italy in that situation, but that's why this is the lesson I learned, which is like... So I learned patience here. I learned to be patient standing in a queue, and I learned also about immediate karma, if you want to believe in that. I was standing on a queue right after demonetization, and I had to send a very urgent letter. And it was just me and this guy. I'm not going to say uncle because I've decided not to use uncle and auntie anymore because I think that, no, I think it's a bit ageist, I think, in the end. And there is a problem in India, ageism is coming to India, so I think that I'm being the recipient of it a little bit.
Doesn't mean that we're becoming uncles and aunties, does it?
I am definitely an uncle. Look, I am definitely an uncle. So anyway, a man about my age next to me who starts, well, there's no queue, there's nobody, him and I, and he starts rubbing his stomach in my elbow, like pushing. He's like, come on, dude, like just the two of us. But I didn't say that. I just stayed calm and patient. But inside me, I wanted to be that white person. I met an American woman once who told me, if you live in India long enough, one day you'll be in a queue in a post office, and there'll be that person who just loses it and screams to the top of his lungs, and that person will be you. So I just didn't want to be, I thought of that anecdote. I said, let me not be that person. Just be quiet and be calm. And I got immediate karma because I didn't have enough change. Demonetization, you remember, like you couldn't find cash. They wouldn't take the card. And so I was like, I don't know, 20 rupees short, something like that. And so pushy uncle with the belly just heard and understood the situation, and he dished out 20 rupees for me right away. So I just thought, sometimes just be a little patient, and then you'll be rewarded for it.
Instant reward. I'd like also to address, I think at times, I wonder, and I feel like I share this, there's almost a defensiveness in your writing. I feel like you also have read similar Facebook posts amongst people that live here and don't like it. the only advice I listened to when I moved to India was stay away from people that don't like it. And that's the only advice I give to people that are coming to India. Because when I was here, if people moaned about it, I'd just think, well, just go if you don't like it. I get really annoyed with white people complaining about pollution. I don't mind if Indians complain. But, you know, it's just that thing of like, there's something you can do about that. And I sense that very strongly in your writing. And you do have a go at the haters.
Yes.
Talk us through that.
No, I think that if you are a Mappillai and you're integrated, you have all the right to complain about pollution. But if you are an Italian worker who's in a town in northern India and you write on your book posts, you know, I'm going called Italians in India in your private group, I'm going out for beers, you know, anyone wants to join me except Indians. It reminds me too much of no Indians and dogs allowed in the colonial clubs that are now occupied by Indians. And so I just recognize culture shock, which is what I studied in university as well. I mean, I recognize that there is that problem that when you go to a foreign country you encounter, which is called fight, flight, and filter. So the first reaction is that you fight the culture that is hosting you. You want to leave it, you flight, and you filter. You start seeing everything through the filter of your own culture. So, okay, so because I'm a patient OCI now, an overseas citizen of India, I can not get angry at that person for writing that, but I agree, they need help. It's simple as that. So I suggest always, you know, study intercultural communication. If you're moving to India to work, or to any other culture in Latin America, take an intercultural communication course, because it will avoid you being depressed and angry at things you don't understand. And if you did understand them, would make your life easier, but would teach you things like, for example, that some guy can leave you 20 rupees whenever you need it.
Yeah, you just never know. I want to return to the subject of white privilege, which filters into white people's lives in ways that I think they really fully do not understand. White people that live in India they punch above their weight. I mean, we punch above our weight in a way that's completely unfair. How do you address and unpick that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's changing a little bit, especially in places like Delhi and Mumbai, where the Goras have been there for a couple of decades, probably. Not New India, let's say, at least 10 years, 15 years. So there's been an influx of whiteys. So I think it's a little bit changed. There's a little less.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I, as a whitey, for example, on approaching a big queue, have been ushered to the front, and I was just mortified. Like, what do you do? This is just awkward.
You can refuse to do that, and also remember that.
It's just a hideous conundrum.
But also, you have to remember that we have a price to pay, which is we get asked to be on photographs all over the place in India. So now, as an integrated Velle Gora, I refuse to do that, because I'm like, you know, this is, I'm going every morning on my walk on the beach. You are here for the first time. You are actually the tourist. You want me to stop because you think that I'm an American tourist with a hat. So.
I put it to you then that you're not partaking in your bargain, because if you're not letting people get their selfie, you still must at some level be enjoying white privilege. I mean, it's just there.
Yes, I'm being unfair, totally. Yes, I'm being totally unfair, which is kind of part of being Italian and Indian as well. So yeah, I take advantage of it, and no, I try not to. I point out in the book that I go for some gas refuelment at the gas station in Tamil Nadu, and there are these two teenage boys who elbow each other and say, look, Velle, which means whitey, right? And okay, it's fine, I take it, I don't get angry, but there is also that flip side of the coin. If you live here, you are always taken for a tourist, and so you're put on a travel panel.
Just don't put him on a travel panel, JLF. Do you read
Unless I write a travel book, I mean.
Migrancy only. I would like to have a little argument with you, actually. There's a line right towards the end where you talk about...
English always when I have arguments.
That's just what we do, you know. We're just ornery,
okay.
You know it.
I'm ready.
There's a line where you talk about the trajectory of women and their profile in Indian life. And you talk about the matrilineal bosses and leaders amongst, matriarchal societies. And then you progress to say Indian women have changed in the eyes of the world lately, hitting records. Now, Indian women are leading alongside the ladies of Venezuela with the highest number of Miss World and Miss Universe winners. Come on!
No, I think it's
Did
important.
Tashani read that?
No, yeah, she did.
Indian women are doing a lot more than winning beauty contests, Carlo.
I say something worse because I go into
the porno
taxonomy
bit.
of porno as well.
Yeah.
So no, I think it's important because you don't remember that 20 years ago it wasn't there. That being brown meant not being beautiful. So accepting that brown is beautiful brings women to be able to compete also in beauty. I'm not for beauty pageants. I'm not in favor of them at all. But what I'm saying is that there is some progress being made there. I mean, maybe you don't remember, but like the acceptance comes through in those venues as well.
There are other indices of progress,
I think so. I think so. Simply the fact of understanding that the canon of beauty, I mean, of course, opens up to that as well. And this, I mean, like I said, 30 years ago, now it's quite accepted worldwide, but I think it's taken some time because it hasn't always been there. So, okay. And I'm talking about Indian in particular because I'm not talking about African American, but that Indian beauty has become to be appreciated more widely. This is something that has happened. It's not something that has always been there. Because I remember where racism kept that away from being accepted.
I would love it if you would read from the section about your wedding.
Yes,
That's
well,
this is particularly beautiful, multicultural event.
Yeah, this happens in the heart of my stay here because it's something that happened in 2014, and this book is about being in India from 2008 until 2018. Actually, I have one chapter which I go back to a beach in Kerala with my mom in 2018, where I was in 2008, and I contemplate what I was like in 2008, the yoga people starry-eyed, and this grumpy middle-aged Indian uncle I've become in 2018. And but in 2014, it's the most important, I suppose, event, and happens towards the end of the book. To me, it's important. It's an atmospheric piece, and there's a trigger warning. If you don't like out-of-tune singing, you should leave now because I'll have to do a little bit of that because they're singing at weddings, right? Yeah. So, but to me, the important thing, aside from the atmosphere, I'll just describe what's happening there, is that it's an ode to multiculturalism because there are Italians, Scottish, Welsh, Belgians, Japanese, friends from all over the world coming to my wedding, and in a time in which we're going in the opposite direction, that it's so important to be identified with your ethnicity or your identity. And I come from a different generation. I still believe in integration. And so for me, the importance of this chapter is that it's an ode to that. But I have my limits. So when Carlo Montecarlo, my Italian tenor friend, insisted to sing Italian new melodic songs at the wedding, I put a strong censorship and I said, you know, do not do that because this is not the Sopranos. And I don't want it to look like some Italian-American wedding in Brooklyn, please. Of course, it didn't go that way, but we'll see how. And I have a Gujarati father-in-law and a Welsh mother-in-law, and this is why the title of this chapter is My Big Fat Jane Scottish Welsh Venetian Indian Wedding. Part of the complex Gujarati marriage ceremony includes the fact that I had to leave my slippers by the side of the stage, and my two rather athletic sisters would be in charge of preventing the bride's family from stealing them. It's a Gujarati ritual. I had forgotten to explain to my warrior sisters, made of strong moral and physical metal, that it was more of a ritual, not a game that we had to win at all costs. And it was not games without borders, although it most certainly looked like it. But us wildlings from the Dolomitic valleys are renowned for being competitive and fierce at protecting our property. So Maya and Edita, my sisters, were clenching those gilded slippers with all their might, putting my acquired vegetarian Jane cousins into serious difficulty, causing a rugby tussle, toppling over cushions and chairs in the general laughter and bringing us back down from the heavens of spiritual remembrances and mystical contemplations of what our bond would mean, down to the earthy fact that this was supposed to also be fun. And fun it was, especially when my robust sisters stomped on the stage for the next ritual, which gives the name to the expression, tying of the knot. It comes from the matrimonial gesture in which the groom's siblings have to come up to the altar and tie one end of the groom's scarf to the end of the bride's sari. The problem is, again, that my Venetian sisters are all about being efficient and are always determined to complete any task at their best. So Edita actually managed to tie such a strong knot using a lot of my golden scarf that not only was it impossible to untie, okay, good omen, but I almost got choked while she pulled, making me cough for help, bad omen. All right, the mantras and rituals were finally over, and it all ended in a marvelous red petal shower, which in my cheeseball mind I could not help but associate with the flowers that fell from the pergola in a restaurant on the banks of the Po River in Turin 4 years before, in the first lunch Tishani, my wife, and I ever had together, when we found that the cascading petals were just a bit too much and we had to walk away. So dinner had its surprises as well. The Jane family had their own large round table next to the Jane chef's counter, away from the un-Jane food, which the 100 invitees started sticking their forks and knives and fingers into, while some entertainment was provided. First, our English godchild, Milo Ziggy, aged 3, already musically bent on becoming a rock star, sang, "Lucy and the Sky of Diamonds," a cappella, like that. Then my percussionist friend Luca Nardone played along with Peter, who strummed an Elvis tune on his guitar. Peter is a 6'4", half Japanese, half Belgian, who likes to wear fake sideburns and go beep-ba-palula, a remnant of his ancient busker days in Brussels before buying a castle near Paris. And Edita, my sister, who's a Mozartian voice soprano, had prepared a duet with Carlo Montecarlo in honor of our house to sing Arlanimor. It's the name of our house. There's such a song in Welsh which croons of that Arlan I Mor, that place besides the sea, where red roses are growing and I've been able to make them grow, where white lilies are showing and I've got white frangipani trees, where the beauty of these flowers is telling, and where my true love sleeps within her dwelling. But in Welsh, it all sounds like this. Arlanimor me rosis cocion, Arlanimor me lilis gwinion, Arlanimor men gariadine. You see, it's not the easiest sound to pronounce for two Italian singers of the opera. But they were managing just fine, until my sister squawked out a high-pitched sound which the Welsh girls, my mother-in-law's sister and her childhood friends, did not seem to recognize as properly Welsh. As Edita kept coughing, we realized, as she explained later, that a mosquito had flown right into her open throat and got stuck there, putting an end to this tearful, nostalgic song. Then, as my best man, Fabrizio, was droning on a passionate and ironic speech about our friendship and my love for Tishani, the electricity went off. No mic. Current gone. It all fell into darkness out there beside the sea. We suddenly heard the slow breathing of the ocean and waited for the generator to kick in, which it didn't. From the corner of my eye, I saw Carlo Montecarlo jump to his feet. No, I thought, he's not going to do it. I warned him not to do it. He better not do it. O sole mio, sta in fronte a te. O kish tu sole. Yes, he was doing it. A cappella, no music, in the darkness. To the awe of all our friends and family, he delivered the most heartfelt and most heartbreaking O sole mio I've ever heard. A song about the sun, about light, about love shining like a bright sun right there in that seaside darkness, current gone, generator off. And when he hit his final line, along with the roar of a very loud and long applause, the light magically came back and the dances started. Current back. Well, that's what it was like.
Can I just say that was some impressive Welsh as well? My goodness, what a tour de force. Wow, I've forgotten what my next question was. That was so... Thank you.
What did you do with the money of singing lessons?
Yeah, get that money back. No, I'm just kidding. We're coming to questions in just one moment. I do have one more question, and it comes off the back of this. I felt like I was there at your wedding, and it comes off the back of that. I've noticed that a word that pops up quite regularly is cheesy and cheeseball, and I wonder if, in some way, you're kind of apologizing for your frankly gorgeous life. You have an amazing wife, an enviable existence, and are you kind of upfronting that?
No, no, I wish I was. The problem is that that's what my wife calls me all the time, because maybe because it's the Welsh side or the Indian side, but she finds this excessive enthusiasm that I have sometimes in describing positively things as a bit too cheesy, so she tones me down, which is very good for my style, I suppose, but like, because I've had such darkness before, actually, but, you know, all this happiness comes from having had not great luck necessarily in life. And there is also a serious side to this book, which talks about the domestic abuse that I witnessed here in India and the other problems, of course. It's not an advertisement for how everything is great in India. It's how everything, yes, it is, has been lucky for me here. So
do you feel lucky?
I feel very lucky, yes, to have met the woman that brought me here, definitely, yes, yeah, I feel lucky, and especially compared to what my life was before. So, yes, it's been an agent of transformation, of alchemical change for me, and it brought a better life. So that's what I try to describe in the book, and it's true that when you try to talk about happiness, it's a lot harder because you can fall in the cheeseball trap. So that's why I remind myself and I remind the reader that I may be a cheeseball sometimes, so that you kind of forgive me for that.
We love the cheese, am I right?
Italian cheese.
I would like to, we have already, you know, loud requests for more singing.
No.
Questions, please, questions for Carlo.
No improv.
Right here.
Hi, I'm also a Mappillai, a non-Tamilian married to a Tamilian. So I just wanted to ask you one question. What were the food problems that you had when you went to your wife's relatives' houses?
What the food?
Food problems. Food.
Oh, for my stomach?
No, food. What the type of food that they give you, the type of food that they would have given you.
Where?
To eat in your wife's relatives' houses.
In the wedding ceremony?
Wife's relatives' houses.
Oh, I see. The Jane food, you mean? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you mean like rasgulla you're talking about? Yes. The thing I have in common with the Jains, especially with, that maybe answers your question, is a very, very sweet tooth. So yes, we have a common passion for rasgulla and anything sweet. So because the Jains, and the Gujarati rather, mix a lot of salty with sweet, and yes, that's very easy for me. So I have the rotli bhaji at lunch. I'd have that typical Gujarati food every day at lunch. So that's, that's for...
Question here.
You touched on this, but you didn't expand on it. Can you expand on it? What are the similarities between Italians and Indians?
Yes. Well, you know, Salman Rushdie said the Indians are like Italians without wine. And I think you're getting better wine. So, I mean, the similarities. So, well, no, there is a lot of similarities, of course. We're obsessed with our mothers. And our mothers don't always improve us, but make us think that we're too special, which is a problem, right? But there is also a very big similarity there, of course, in the relationship of the role of the mother, which again, it's a secret problem that has to be expanded upon eventually. The relationship with food, you travel with food, we travel with food. We have a similar constitution, it was written at around the same time, which explains the political problems that we have also. Because it's a very pluralistic and egalitarian constitution, and we have not either of us been able to manage it as we should, and we could. I mean, this is a common problem that we have. So there are a lot of similarities, I think. I mean, Pasolini said that Italians are always lured into believing we're similar to the Indians, but their spirituality is so different. But I think he didn't stay in India long enough. Well, Indians are pretty good.
He's not gonna argue with that.
We've had the Renaissance.
We're going to move to this lady now. Sorry, one question each.
It's true, we've had the Renaissance.
We have a question
You're
here,
right.
Carlo. This lady wants to talk to you.
So you talked about any compliments. In Bangalore, we have a way of saying this. They say, "Solpa adjust, Madi," or "Please adjust." Yes. So you said you moved to my question is, you said you moved to the US around age 16, and then you moved to India later. Yes. So did you have to... What about your adjustment process in the US? Was that much more than your adjustment process in India, or can you just compare and contrast,
well,
you know, the adjustment?
That's a very good question, because it's actually the question that I asked myself for my next book, which is going to be about Pensacola, this very, you know, southern the state in the southern United States, where in the Bible Belt, where I moved when I was 16. And of course, there had to be a lot of adjustment for me, even though I came from the provinces of Italy, so from the middle class in the provinces of northern Italy, so I understood about being in the periphery, and I was quite in the periphery in the south, but it took a lot of adjustment. And that's why I think that I learned to adjust. When I moved to Pensacola for 3.5 years, I learned to adjust in Washington, D.C. for a year. I learned to adjust back in Geneva. I learned to adjust in New York, in Buenos Aires, in Mexico, in Madrid, in Venice, and in all the other towns. So that first adjustment at 16, learning how to deal with nostalgia, for example, that was the biggest thing. It happened the first night when I arrived there, and I cried my eyes out because I was in a strange land with strange family was hosting me that didn't know me, just saw me on a file with some photographs as an exchange student. And the day after, I decided that I'd be, integrated, and I stopped being nostalgic and missing my home and my family because I was a boy, right? So I think it was an important test that prepared me for the subsequent ones. That's why maybe it's a little easier for me to adjust. I studied it then in university, but I think that it has to be promoted because if it doesn't, then you have what's happening politically now, which is closing up the barriers again. Since I remember Europe before Schengen, I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
A question here.
Sir, do you think it's high time that we learn from our previous rulers, be it from Italy or India? We coming from a culturally strong background with heritage, with monuments. Do you think we should invest enough money today for people to come back to us to increase our tourism, be it Italy, be it India? And the fact that you're in US, they're creating buildings that have become monuments or will become monuments after 100 years. Are you able to influence the policymakers, the lawmakers, and your government to put in more money in art and culture, heritage, leading to tourism?
Absolutely. I mean, I could just answer by saying yes, in the sense that...
And how?
Yeah, well, I think that it's funny because I was just reading this morning about a very important Italian musical conductor arguing exactly this, about the importance not to be inspired by the rulers, but be inspired by the importance and centrality of culture, which belongs to everyone. And so that's why public money has to be used to promote culture, music, literature, and it's less and less, of course. So I think that we have to, and in India as well, there's great knowledge to be gained and to be, not necessarily from our past rulers, but definitely from the Vedic texts, whether you believe or not. There is a lot of knowledge to be learned there. And so there are points in common with those who want to defend the Vedic texts and those who want to defend culture, because that is culture as well. But it has to also promote the importance and centrality of science. Because then if you go into the realm of the irrational and that becomes policy, I think that there is an issue there.
Thank you for that question. Another one over here.
So, Carlo, Italian, I'm a former guest of this country, beautiful country, which I loved. Many cultural similarities, and I think the gentleman there asked you about the similarities and positive. The cultural similarity that I think is a bit unfortunate is politics.
It's?
Politics.
Politics, yes.
Our politics, very bad state, and the Italian and the Indian politics also quite a complicated thing. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about what you see as the differences and the similarities in the political system between Italy and India?
Italy and India. Well, when I mentioned the constitution is because it's very pluralistic, so it gives voice to, in theory, the constitution to diversity. And Italian constitution had regionalism from the beginning. It was not implemented until 1970, so a very centralized system developed, which caused all the subsequent problems because a lot of the issues, economical and social, that were local, were not addressed because there was a centralized plan, which didn't take into consideration. I think that we're seeing a similar phenomenon happening in India as well. I promised the Southern India that I'd be an ambassador from Southern India to Northern India. There is not an understanding of the richness of the diversity that you have here in India. And I think that there is a wealth that could be promoted in that. So this is another political similarity of division, which is bound to increase, because apparently demographic growth in the north is going to is surpassing very fast demographic growth on the south. So there was going to be 2/3 of India in 2025 or 2030, don't take me for, double check the date, that are going to come from northern India. So you will have a lot of political issues coming up in the near future in India, which is how do you integrate in Hindi speakers in a Tamil or Kerala, Malayali speaking part of the country. You will need to do that. So there will be similar integration topics that we have in Italy now, for example. So even in current politics we have. So the system, I think, for me, the thing is to follow the letter of the constitutions, because it's already there. It's just applying it correctly which is the difficult task.
Not to mention the environmental implications of that and the increasing desertification of the north, and the south still has water. I mean, that's a
Well, we have
future.
water, but there are plans to start coal plants, and that's restarting now because of the race with China, and so that is a major mistake. There is a plan near my little paradise to do that, to open a coal plant. We are half an hour from a nuclear plant. Hopefully everything is fine with that. But yes, there are, of course, huge. Amitav Ghosh, luckily, keeps talking about it and reminding us of the centrality in India. India becoming Akash Kapoor wrote a very good detailed account of what's happening in southern India with the threat of pollution and
yes.
burning plastic.
We had another question here by the side. Yes, you.
So,
yes.
a really relevant or predominant Indian concept is the concept of jugaad, which is
concepts of?
It's the concept of jugaad, which is using family or social connections to get things done. So, have you really experienced this or taken part in any jugaad event?
Jagan.
Jugaad.
Sorry?
Jugaad.
Yeah, jugaad. Yeah. Because I speak Tamil, not Hindi. But anyway, no, I actually don't even speak Tamil well. But, you know, there is a problem with that in the sense that we have a similar expression in Italy to continue this parallelism. It's called tira campare, which means not to survive, but to sort of, yeah, it's the same as Jugand. It's like finding a solution within whatever you have at your disposal. But there is a problem because I think that if you have a state and you have an administration, you can't leave it up to people to always find a solution for themselves, because this is why we have a social contract. So it's a little bit, it's great, our inventiveness as Italians and Indian, because we invent things to find a solution to fix the engine that breaks down all the time.
But you try and join in, don't you? You try, when people are fixing things, you try and join in and you annoy people, don't you?
Because I have it instinctively, but then I learned that you're not supposed to do it if you are the boss or something. But what I'm saying is, there's a trick in that concept. Yes, we're proud of it because we can find a solution, but there's a trick. Because it's actually, if we have a social contract with the state should take care of certain issues that are left up to us. See what I mean? So it's great that we have it. We had to develop it, but it's not, there is an entity which is supposed to take care of the roads, of public property, you know, I don't know if it's answered your question, but.
There was a question here.
Hello, sir. To the best of my knowledge, I think there are a lot of similarities in the Indian family system as well as the Italian family system, living in a joint family and coming back to the family after college and after school. So what do you think are the benefits of that, and do you think that restricts us from being independent?
Or our relationship with family?
Yeah.
If it restricts her from being independent. It's a fascinating question for the next book I'm working on, because of course, having left my family at 16, I asked myself that question, of course. So I think that I wrote my first novel. It's not happy at all. It's about a patricide, that it investigates domestic abuse, domestic violence, and the fact that in Italy, family killings total more dead people than all the organized crime put together. So mafia, camorra, all that fashionable stuff, they kill less people than families, than your relatives. So there obviously is a problem with the family as well, which we don't like to address because sentimentally we're so close to our relatives, right? So, but it is there, evidently. There is some sort of neurosis that develops and it has to be addressed. So that's why it is important to find the right balance. On the other hand, you have the cultures of freedom, Anglo-Saxon culture, where family is too absent. And so the human experience, to me, it's limiting. Because I think that very often you feel that coldness, and if you go to America, you feel it. The sense of loneliness and alienation that maybe to them is less heavy than if you come from a family-oriented culture. So I think that the secret is, because this is one of the things of the great selling points of multiculturalism, that we can take the best of the Anglo-Saxon culture and the best from the family-oriented cultures and find our own way. I think I found it, and I can enjoy greatly my family and my family relationship and my freedom at the same time. But I think it's a good question to keep asking yourself.
Yeah. Do the pick and mix. Thank you for that question. And there's one over here.
Yeah, as you just quoted Mussolini, my question is, where do you see the differences between the treatment of the political heritage that Europe has, Italy also has? So I'm from Germany, so there are some similarities. And the things you have seen in India in the past already as well concerning the political problems. Do you see there are differences in how we treat the political, cultural, political heritage, maybe?
Are you talking about a rise in extremism, or?
Yeah, I talk about rising extremism and how we tread today and how we have a view on, Mussolini, for example, as a fascistic leader.
So just to be clear, are you asking Carlo to reflect on the rise of political extremism in India compared to Europe?
Not about the rise, I think just the general treatment, the debate which is going on in the society. This is more the question, how we openly debate or not openly debate in the...
No, it's not overly debated, for sure.
Yeah.
But definitely it's not debated enough. It's using the wrong words, I think, in the debate. That's the problem. It's not that it's overly debated or... For example, in Italy, and in maybe in Germany as well, in some parts of Europe, we use the word populism, where it would be more appropriate to say what it is, which is fascism. So that is an issue that I see that is a serious problem that we have in talking about the rise of extremism. It's very different from the extremism here, which is religiously related. So whereas there are some extreme Catholics in the Northern League, some connection with Opus Dei and the Northern League, and there are, but obviously it's a more of a lay, because religion is in a crisis somehow, and of course the messages from the religious leader there are for integration and against extremism, luckily, Pope Francis. So I think they're very different types of extremism, so I think that I don't know if there are connections, except that the way you have to fight them varies, I think, because exactly of their different route.
We've got a lot of ground covered today. We've got time for just one more question, and it's my friend here at the back.
Thank you. Having heard you read those two passages, I feel like it's going to be very difficult to enjoy the book, reading it by myself. Are you doing an audio book?
I didn't hear it.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat, please?
I said, having heard you read those passages, I feel like it's going to be very difficult to read it by myself. Are you doing an audio book?
Are you suggesting that Carlo read the entire book to you?
Audiobook.
I see, yeah. This is going to have to be a personalized experience, Carlo. How long have we got?
It's been happening at the last few readings that a lot of people have suggested that Simon & Schuster India, write to them. They have the rights for the audiobook. I'm happy to do it. Let them know, and I'm happy to read it.
With song. Definitely
with songs,
song.
okay?
And with
Maybe we
your
can
voice.
do a bonus track with just songs. Okay. An alap I'll do.
Is there one more question out there? Anyone else got another? Well, yes, we do have one more. Two more? I can just see you. Yes, quick, hand up. You've already had one. But is there somebody that hasn't had a question that still wants to? In the front? Did you? No? Okay, then you can have two.
There's a lady there. Sorry, because just
we want
the right to... Then if there is time, we'll take your question
Yeah,
as
we'll
well.
come to you if there's time.
What in the family, Indian family, did you find something that you'd like to retain permanently? And what about an Indian family do you feel that you wouldn't like to accept?
About Indian family?
Yes, the Indian family system,
What is Indian family and what I like and what I don't like about it?
Yeah.
See...
So something that you'd want to keep permanently, even if you move out of here.
Sorry? So what would you keep from the Indian family structure?
I have to explain that I'm lucky, because I do have an Indian family, but it's a particular Indian family because I have a Welsh mother-in-law. So, I mean, I can't say that it's fully the traditional Indian family experience, even though my mother-in-law has been here 45 years, and so she's totally Indianized. According to my wife, she's more Indian than Indian women. And but it's still a particularly different family because they had to have their hybridity accepted as well. So their friends are similar couples, like my wife and I are, the mixed couple. So it's a different reality in a certain way. So there is a Sindhi with an English wife. There is a Malayali with an Irish wife. And then there are also Indian couple friends, of course, but they also have shared in their generation of people born in the 40s this experience. So that defines a different type of family, which had already to be open. So when the daughter decides to marry an Italian, it's already a lot easier for me than, for example, other Italian Mappillais that I know in Chennai that had to probably face more barriers, because also that cool father-in-law that I have, who was hitchhiking throughout Italy in 1966 with his long curls, not that he's a hippie, he's an industrialist, but still he's a very open-minded Jane. And so I can't see anything wrong in the experience, except that there is too many rasgullas whenever I go and eat, and you have to eat all of them. So
I think on that very sweet note, we have to end this session. Huge thanks to Carlo. Please buy this book.
Thank you.
What an engaging session. Thank you very much, Carlo Pizzati and B. Rowlatt. They are both going to be signing their books at the book signing area, which is on your left of their bar hall.
We'll see you next door.